The Holy Gospel of our Savior Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But Jesus said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbiter over you?" And he said to the crowds, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
What is the purpose of a seed? You can put it on a shelf, put it under glass. You could, stick it in the fridge. What's the purpose of a seed? What is a seed just by its nature meant to do, meant to have done with it? Plant it. Is that right? No. Just kidding. So today's gospel begins with somebody in the crowd. Jesus is teaching, and the person from the crowd yells out, "Isn't this wonderful? Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Now, what's wrong with this? I just want you to understand the problem, because it's a little bit of like inside baseball Jewish custom. In the Jewish law, the Jewish Torah, it says that when you have many children, technically many sons, when the parents die, the eldest son gets a double portion. And that's just to sort of, because they're technically carrying the line, they're carrying the family name, and so they get more of the stuff, because that's sort of where it's supposed to go. So if you have two children, you divide it into three, and then the eldest would get 2 parts, and the second would get 1. If you had 5 children, you would divide it into 6, and the eldest would get 2 portions, and everybody else would get 1. So that's the problem here. You see, divide suggests 50-50. So this is why Jesus is suddenly keyed into greed, because somebody's listening to Jesus and they're like, "I'll bet, watch this, I'll bet he'll say 50-50 is what's actually fair, and then I can get an extra portion, because my elder brother is getting 2/3 and I am only getting 1/3. Wouldn't it be great if I could have half? Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance." And Jesus said, "Yeah, you're not going to catch me on that one. Go talk to a lawyer, go talk to a judge," which, of course, everybody in the crowd knows the judge is going to affirm the law. Which then occasions Jesus to talk about greed. And he begins by sort of, be careful about greed, because one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And then goes on to tell this parable. Now, you've just heard it, right? My instinct is to go back through it. But so essentially, we've got this guy who has all this stuff. A few things to notice. The guy didn't do anything wrong, right? He didn't get all the wealth by lying, by cheating, by stealing from people, extorting. It's, wealth that comes from the ground. There's no way of knowing. You plant the seeds, it could be a terrible year. Maybe it doesn't get water at just the right time. Maybe you only get enough for one more year. This farmer's just doing what they always do, but what happens is it's a bumper crop. And suddenly when he looks out, he's got way more wealth than he ever imagined or ever sort of even expected. And now the question is, what are you going to do with all this wealth? And as you see in the parable, his idea is, boy, my barns aren't going to fit all of this. Bigger barns! Tear down the barns, which I always thought was an odd deed. Just build a new one. Don't tear down this perfectly good barn. But no, tear it down. Tear down my barns and build larger barns. And put everything in there. And then this odd moment and then I will say to my soul, do you talk to your soul very often? It's such an odd detail. This is a very weird set of readings here. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods for many years. Eat, drink, and be merry. Of course, the narrative purpose of that is because he's totally wrong. In fact, God says, you don't have many years. You don't have all this dream you have, this vision you have of how all of this is going to help you is actually wrong. It reveals the guy's ignorance. And, ignorance is sort of a nasty word, but it just sort of means unawareness, right? It reveals his almost like presumption to know, so I have 3 decades left, and won't this be wonderful? And God said, you have no idea. You don't know how long you have. It is kind of foolish just to sort of presume. In fact, this day your life will be demanded of you, and all those goods can get you in the heart. Whose will they be? Another weird detail in this parable is silos full of grain. And this guy saying, I have all that I need for many years. Is anyone else picturing this guy for the next 10 years, like eating seeds? Breakfast, more seeds. Lunch, delicious, seeds. What's for dinner? Seeds. Oh, good. What do we have in next week? Seeds. Right? Like he's just got barns full of seeds. Like he just was like grain, right? Next year, seeds. A decade from now, delicious, more seeds. It makes no sense, right? It's like, wouldn't you get tired of the seeds? And here's where we sort of draw ourselves a full circle. Because what is the purpose of seeds? Are they meant to be in barns? You could put them in barns. They'll survive in barns. Is that what seeds are for? What are seeds for? This is sort of the secret meaning of the parable. That's sort of the detail you don't notice that opens up all of its meaning. What is the purpose of seeds? What are you supposed to do with seeds? You're supposed to, tell me.
Plant.
You're supposed to plant them. So what he's doing is unnatural for the seeds. And it's actually also unnatural for the soul. Because what you're supposed to do with seeds is plant them. And what happens when you plant them? Then they grow more. When you plant them, they grow more. And then what happens? And then you plant them, and then they grow more. In some sense, he's being very, very, like he's locking himself into poverty, not riches, by keeping them in the barns. This is also true for his soul. Because by putting them in the barns, he's locking himself into poverty. How is that? Because one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. What's the best thing about your life? What's the best thing about your life? Does anybody want to raise your hand and say, my 401k? Not anymore. The market took a little turn on Friday. We'll see what happens. Although the S&P is at an all-time high, so will it keep going up? We'll see. What is the best thing about your life? Think about it. What really makes it good? I bet it has something that at its heart has something to do with somebody sharing. Maybe your best thing about your life is Netflix. Guess what? All those artists. Do you ever watch the credits? All those artists are giving to you. They're spending there all the time and energy, decades, learning how to act, learning lighting, learning costumes, learning how to write scripts. And what did they do? They gave all that out. They put themselves out there. They got together into a crowd, into a group of people who create shows, and then they shared them with Netflix, and they share them with the world, and you watch them, and you love them, and the whole thing. What if somebody made a whole series, a beautiful and extraordinary series that would change the world by people being touched by it, and then they put it in a barn? And said for themselves, from now on, for the rest of my life, morning, noon, and night, I shall watch my own series. Right? It's unnatural. And it's robbing yourself of the gift of connection. It's robbing the world of receiving. The purpose of seeds is to share it. What's the best thing about your life? Is it a loved one or a friend? Why? Because you're sharing your life with them. You see, here's the odd thing, and I sort of want you to hold on to this as we end this morning. Wealth on earth comes from holding back. Wealth in heaven, God wealth, comes from sharing. And this is why Jesus talks about money so much. It's okay to have a retirement account, right? It's okay to store things, like to be the wise grasshopper. Isn't the wise grasshopper, or is it the wise ant? You know the story? Anyway, the one that saves the stuff during the warm season, and then, through the time when it's harder for you to work for whatever reason, as you're older, you get to enjoy those things. That's just wise. That's just smart. There's nothing wrong with having a savings account. You can take a seed and put it in the fridge. You can take a seed and put it in a shelf. You can take a seed and put it in a barn. It's not exactly what it's for, but if you're going to use it later, that's okay. But you can't put them all in the barn, because that makes no sense. Right? Wealth on earth comes from holding back and keeping, but heavenly wealth, godly wealth, the wealth of the Spirit comes from sharing. It comes from giving. It comes from taking a seed and planting it. It comes from taking an idea and telling it. It comes from taking a full heart and speaking from it. It comes from holding someone's hand and going for a walk and sharing your life with them and watching over children and laughing and enjoying and sharing. It comes from investing in growing things, growing hospitals and growing orphanages and growing churches where people can come together and taking care of social services and caring for the needs of the world and coming together and talking to your friends. Everything that makes the heart full comes from sharing. And everything that sort of makes the bank account full comes from keeping. And so, it's left to you to find the balance. Jesus is worried about people who are just focused on the withholding. People who are not rich toward God, but rich towards themselves. And why? For your sake. Jesus is worried about them for their sake, because they're making themselves poor. They're cutting themselves off from others. They're keeping themselves from rejoicing in the richness that comes from the shared life. And Jesus wants us to have that. One's life consists not in the abundance of their possessions, but in perhaps the multitude of their friends. And so I hand it on to you, dear friends. How big are your barns? How much are you holding back? How much are you sharing? Here's a little tip. It's not just money. You could be holding back love. Don't keep putting your love in barns. Share it. You could be holding back creativity. Let your light shine. You could be holding yourself back employment-wise, in allowing yourself to be underemployed because you're afraid, making risks of going out there, of seeing yourself as being great and trying for that job and thing. There's all kinds of ways we can hold back. This morning, Jesus is saying, what you share is what truly thrives. And as you share, you become truly alive.